So one of the biggest things that I hear about entrepreneurship is that you have to be creative, right? Entrepreneurs are creative people that take risks doing things they're passionate about. How is that definition for entrepreneurship? If I were to walk down the street and say, that's what entrepreneurship was, I think 99% of the people would go, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Creative, risky, passion, yeah, that's entrepreneurs. Well, we're going to disregard all three of those. And I think that this is one of the most important things that we have to share with you, is that entrepreneurship is not about creativity. It's not about risk, and passion is worthless, okay? So I want to go through all three of those and debunk them one at a time. We want to start off with creativity and talk a little bit about that. Here is some stuff of mine, right? I was in Georgia Trend magazine, you know, the 40 under 40 every year, the 40 most important people under 40 in the state each year. Well, I was number one when I was 31, okay? So I was ranked the number one most important person under 40 when I was 31. Number two that year was Royal Marshall. The guy who died recently was Neil Bortz's sidekick, remember, on WSB radio? Really sad. Huh? No, that was the other guy that died. That was Captain Herb. They lost two guys at WSB radio in the last year, both really young and both to heart attacks. So it's sad. But anyway, I want to point out something about this first. At this time in my business career, I was trying to raise money, right? So I was trying to raise my profile. And so I hired a publicist to get me in magazines and stuff. And the publicist said this, what magazines do you want and what awards do you want to win? And I was like, what do you mean, what awards do you want to win? And she was like, no, seriously, what awards do you want to win and what magazines do you want to appear in? Because I'll get you in those. And I was like, well, my mother reads Time, and, you know, my mother reads Georgia Trend. Oh, Georgia, we can get you in Georgia Trend. Do you want to be 40 under 40? And I was like, sure, I'd love to be 40 under 40. That was like $4,000. I was like, excuse me? If you pay me $4,000, I will guarantee you're 40 under 40. And if you want to be number one, $5,000. I was like, that's not how this works. And she's like, yes, it is. That is how these things work. I promise you, that is how these things work. So, one of the big lessons that we need to learn as entrepreneurs is all of these awards and stuff that you see out there, almost all of them are purchased, right? You know, here at the Chamber, you can't purchase the Business Person of the Year. I'm one of the judges for that, and you can't purchase that. Well, you could. Let me start over. You could, if you knew the right judge, because I'll take bribes all day long, right? But anyway, I was shocked to learn that all of this stuff about PR was largely purchased, right? And so I got all sorts of wins. I was, you know, Business Person of the Year and all of this silly stuff. Just recently, I got the Small Business Administration Radio Show of the Year. Was really happy about that. All of those, somehow money went into all of them. It's not this altruistic thing where they go out and vote for the best. It doesn't happen. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know that this is all a bunch of BS. When you see someone winning an award, you should discount it a lot, right? Like, for example, tonight is the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year ceremonies, right? And that's a nationwide thing. What % of Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year winners do their accounting at Ernst & Young? It's a question you need to ask. All of them do. Is that anyway? So this is a thing that was in the paper or in a magazine about me. Notice how much hair I had back then. And here is a brochure that we used in 2000 that was mailed to all of our customers, right? And you can see the names on here: Adobe, the Discovery Channel, Sony, Microsoft, Swatch, Lucas, George Lucas, Lego, Hasbro, EA Games, some of the biggest names in the computer world, right? And the reason I did that, why did I send that to everybody, all of my customers?
It's good enough for them.
Yeah, to show you how cool I am, because Hasbro sponsored me and Intel sponsored me and all of that, right? Well, this is an amazing business. It grew to 700 employees. We had hundreds of locations around the world, multiple countries, as cool as could be. I want to show you what I copied this business from. This business is 100% a copy of this, National Computer Camps. since 1977. This is their website. It hasn't changed, I don't think, since they put it up. All right? And so that's what they were buying versus my customers would get this wall-size poster for them to hang up in their room with all of my logos on it, right? My business was 100% a copy, 100% a copy. I, as a child, went to this computer camp. I was a dorky computer kid, and I went there as a kid, and I had a great time. I loved it. And when I got fired from Coke, I realized I needed to start a business of my own because I decided that's when I wanted to go back to architecture school, right? I told you I got kicked out of architecture school as well. So I decided, because Coca-Cola fired me, that I wanted to be an architect. And to do that, I was going to have to make enough money during 3 months of the year to support myself for the entire year. So I made a list of summertime businesses that I could think of, like landscaping. Well, I hate grass. I have a horrible histamine reaction. Whenever I cut grass, I just start to sweat and my nose runs. I was like, I can't do that business. I don't like grass. A pool cleaning business, well, I don't really like to swim. I don't like pools and anything. So that's the last thing I wanted to do. So guess what house we just bought? I told you my wife sold my house. Guess what we bought? The largest pool you've ever seen. I mean, if you go on Google Maps, there's the pool like this big and the house is like this big. It's like 9 times bigger than the house. Basically, I'm now the manager of a community pool center. It's huge. So I couldn't do pool cleaning. So summer camps was on my list. And eventually I was like, well, I'll do a summer camp. Because I used to go to tons of summer camps, and computers are really sexy now. And so I called this guy and was like, I would love to be a franchisee of yours. I'd love to start a business of yours and do a new location. And he was like, great, it'd be $50,000 and 12% of your income and blah, blah, blah. And I did all the math. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I can't afford that. That's not a good business deal for me. You've made it so expensive that I can't afford to start a business with you. It would be cheaper for me to start by myself. And so that's exactly what I did. Because he wouldn't sell me a franchise at a reasonable cost, I said, I'll start my own company. And theirs was National Computer Camp. And so national, I can't sound too close to that. So what about American instead of national? Well, that's good. So I'm American Computer, and I can't be camp because they're camp. So what's another word that sounds similar to camp and something? Experience. What about American Computer Experience? ACE. And so that's what we named it. It was ACE, which is, in my opinion, the exact same name as National Computer Camp, right? You see where I stole the name from. It's the same name. And we did the exact same thing that they did. The exact same thing. Where did I learn how to run a summer camp? By going to summer camp as a kid. I was also a CIT there, a counselor in training. It was my first job ever, like when I was 14. And so I understood how to run a camp. You get the kids up at 8 in the morning, you take them to the cafeteria. After that, you take them to the computer, you strap them in front of a computer for 5 or 6 hours. You take them to the swimming pool, you make sure that the same number of bodies go back and forth. This is not that complicated a business, right? Anyone can do this. I'll do it. So 100% a copy. And I'm not going to claim that we had a fresh idea or anything at all. What was interesting, though, is that they ran their camps, and the one I went to was at Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut. Now, have any of you ever heard of Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut? It was awesome in the 1940s. Do you remember Dirty Dancing, that horrible movie? That's exactly what this place was like, okay? Plus 50 years of time have aged it, and it's all run down and stuff. And that's where they ran their summer camps, at Clark Crest Resort in Connecticut. And so I was like, well, we'll do it here in Atlanta. And we started calling around places comparable to Clark Crest Resort, We called Lake Lanier, and we called a bunch of places. And finally, the places were giving us exorbitant, quotes and stuff. And we were like, well, let's just call a school and see if we could do it at a school. And so we called Emory, and Emory was like, yeah, sure, we'd love to do this. Here's our rates, and here it is. And we were like, oh, that's the easiest thing ever. And so we were inspired. Wow, these schools seem to be very receptive. Well, let's kick it up a notch. And so we called Stanford 100% out of the blue. As 2 25-year-old boys, I had a business partner who was also 25, who had never taken care of any children, who had never taught a single class on anything. We called Stanford and were like, we'd like to run summer camps there. And they said, fine, here's our rates. And we were like, well, those are really affordable. We can do that. And they said, fine, what dates do you want? And we were like, 2 weeks in August. They said, fine, and we were done. Like 8 minutes later, we had a reservation for 2 perfect weeks at Stanford. They were giving us an entire building with a quad and places for volleyball and places for our shaving cream fights and everything. We had it all. It was like in an afternoon, everything fell together. And we were like, well, we got to get somewhere on the East Coast to balance it. What's the only place that balances Stanford on the East Coast? MIT. So we called up MIT and they were like, sure, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you. This is a great thing. Your program sounds fantastic. Never once did they say, who are you? Never once did they say, what are your qualifications? Not a single thing. Then like a week later, MIT called and said, oh, by the way, you need a sponsor. And we're like, fine, okay. And they said, one of these 3 people has to sign a sheet of paper that says you have the right to come on MIT. The 3 people are this guy who's on sabbatical in Tibet, this guy who's on his deathbed with cancer, and a guy that no one has seen for 9 years. One of those 3 people has got to sign this sheet of paper. Well, it's sort of a different story, but who do you think I got to sign? I got all 3 of the signatures. I got all 3 of the signatures. I had a girlfriend living in Nepal. I sent her a form. I was like, here's $100, go to Tibet, find this dude, slap him around to get him waking up from whatever state he's in, get him to sign the sheet of paper. I got all 3 of the signatures. 2 days before camp was supposed to start, Stanford called and said, who's your sponsor, by the way? And we were like, well, we don't have a sponsor. You never asked us that. So we found a sponsor in 2 days and got a guy named Dean Michael Jackson. That's his real name. A real professor at Stanford named Michael Jackson signed our sponsorship thing. And so we started our business. 100% a copy of these people, right? We didn't have any of their curriculum, so we had to write our own curriculum or anything like that. But everything that they do at National Computer Camp, we did at ACE. The exact same thing. National Computer Camp, as far as I know, was the first organization to ever give awards to kids. And you all remember when you were kids, the top 2 or 3 kids would get an award, right? Well, National Computer Camp gave an award to everybody. And so we were like, well, we have to copy that too. So out at Stanford, we started giving awards to every kid. And every kid got an award, no matter how stupid it was. The Laurel and Hardy Award for 2 kids that were inseparable, right? They had never heard of Laurel and Hardy, but it didn't matter because they got to go up in front of their parents and pick up a T-shirt. And their prize was the T-shirt that they'd already paid for anyway, right? That was the prize that we gave them. They got to come up and get their T-shirt. But one of the people there was a professor at Stanford, and her kid was there, and she thought it was great that every kid got an award. So she wrote a white paper on how wonderful it is for every kid to get an award. And some soccer league saw that, and that's where this whole idea of every kid getting a trophy started. It's all my fault. I'm 100% responsible and take blame for it. Horrible idea. But what I want you to understand from this story is that we copied my business from these people. And we won't try to hide it. We blatantly copied. That business, the first year, did 98 students, $56,000 in revenue at MIT and Stanford, and we survived to live another year. It cost us $56,000 to do that, so we made exactly 0 money. But you know what? They invited us back for the next year. And Georgetown called and said, hey, we'd like to do this at Georgetown. And anyway, in 5 years, we had added every college in the United States that you've heard of importance. You name a city, I was in the best university there. I was also at the Sorbonne, Oxford, Cambridge, University of Sydney in Australia, all sorts of places, blatantly copying their model. Now, they are still in 3 cities after 40 years of business, in 3 cities, and they've never even updated their webpage. Whereas our webpage had videos and cool things and all sorts of neat things happening, it comes down to execution, right? We executed their idea better than they did. And so there's nothing wrong with me stealing this business. Let me ask you, stealing the idea for the business. When I got a kid, and the kid came to camp and went home happy for the first time ever, did the mother go, well, it doesn't really count that they're happy because you stole the business idea from another dude? Did the mother care about that? No. And when I took the checks to deposit, I would walk into the bank and say, here's $100,000 deposits that I have in checks. the bank would go, oh yeah, you're right, but we have to take 10% off the top. We're having this 10% reduction in all your deposits because you stole this idea from someone else. Did that happen? No, it didn't happen. It never happened at all. And what about this? I'd go out with my other 25, 26-year-old friends. So what are you doing? Well, I'm trying to get a job. General Electric's hiring, so I'm really hoping to get a job with General Electric. I'm on my second interview. What are you doing? I'm starting my own business. Where'd you get the idea? Well, I copied it from this dude. Were they less impressed that I had copied the idea, or did they not care? Were they still like, wow, he's the one that started the business. He's the one who's doing something. Wow, he's his own boss. Did they discount how cool I was because I had stolen the idea from someone else? No, they didn't. So who are we trying to lie to or kid that we're going to have an original idea? I don't understand this. As I said, I was an architecture student. I learned in architecture that there's been one original idea. This guy named Imhotep thought up a building with 4 sides. He put a pyramid on it, the first pyramid. There's not been an original idea since then in architecture. There's not been. If you ask a great musician, you go to, I don't know, who's a famous musician now? I don't even know any of them. Bono or somebody like that, and say, where did you learn your music from? He goes, well, I stole this from Buddy Holly, and this is Muddy Waters, and this is what Paul McCartney used to do. They all talk about their inspirations and who inspired their music, right? What's wrong with entrepreneurs being the exact same way and saying, I didn't have an original idea, but I read this magazine and this guy in Seattle is doing this really cool thing. And I was like, well, why can't I do that in Atlanta? I can. What's wrong with that being your inspiration story? Is that less cool than saying, I had the idea myself? Do you care? As a customer, do you care where I got my idea from? No, you don't. As long as you provide me good quality service at the price you said it was going to cost, I don't care where you got your idea from, do I? What about the bank? Does the bank care? Money is money, right? So if the bank and your customers don't care, who are you trying to lie to or kid? What's wrong with blatantly stealing someone else's idea and doing it as your own? Is there a moral problem with that? Do you have a moral problem with that? Do you go to hell if you steal someone's idea? Well, I don't think you do. I've read the Bible a little bit, and I don't think I find that in there. But as long as you don't steal their trademarks or their copyrights. Other than that, there's nothing out there that you're not allowed to steal. There is no patent on how to run a summer camp. There's no patent on how to sell granite. There's no patent on how to run a concierge service. You're allowed to go and do that too. So, what I really want you to realize is that there's absolutely nothing wrong with being the other guy. And here I have a list of pretty impressive other guys. Okay, you don't own McDonald's, you're the owner of Burger King. Okay, you're not worth 18 billion, you're worth 17 billion. Are you bummed? Okay, you didn't invent Nike, but you're the guy that came up with Adidas. Oh, wow, that sucks. Well, you're not invited to the Oscars because you didn't do Nike. You're just Adidas. Have those words ever been spoken? No. So all of these examples up here show that there's nothing wrong with being another player in the same space, right? Is there anything wrong with opening a new restaurant other than the fact that it's probably going to go out of business because restaurants fail? No, there's not. And so I don't care where you get your idea from. So what we really want to focus on in this little session is we don't care about creativity. It's cool. There's nothing to deny that someone who's a great artist who can make beautiful stuff, that is cool. I will give you that all day long. That is cool. And I love when Zuckerberg comes up with a new, was Zuckerberg the first social media site? No, it wasn't. There were others out there. What did he do to make it sexy? At the beginning, he limited it to only Harvard, right? Only Harvard students could do it. Well, that means if I'm at U Boston, gosh, I really wish I could get in, but I'm not a part of Harvard. So when he did open it to U Boston, everyone piled in it, right? He did do something different. Was he a little bit cooler than, what was the other one? MySpace? They're the exact same idea. MySpace is now dead. Zuckerberg's now worth 20 billion, but I would argue that it's the same business. Zuckerberg just did it better. He was smart enough to figure out if I make it exclusive, people will want to do it more, right? Same business. So I don't know that Zuckerberg was creative, you know? Bill Gates, he invented DOS, right? Well, if you go back in Microsoft history, how did he get DOS? The original product that he sold to IBM. He bought it from another dude. Bill Gates didn't come up with the first DOS that ran the first computers. That was a purchase from someone else. So what is Bill Gates famous for? Taking something that he purchased and making it really big. He's not a creator either. Really? So when you think about it, I can argue away the creativity of a lot of these people and say it just doesn't really matter. It just doesn't matter. The Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which is published by London School of Economics and Babson College up in Boston, which is by far the best school at teaching entrepreneurship, Babson, great program they have there. They published this thing called the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, and it goes around the world and surveys entrepreneurs and gets different levels of entrepreneurships in different countries. And one of the things they've come up with is 93% of the businesses around the world are copies of other businesses. In other words, if you copy, you are in the majority, in the vast majority. And let me take it a step further. If you do something that's never been done before, it's actually much, much harder. So when I decided to take my little summer camp company and expand it internationally, obviously we went to Canada first, McGill and Montreal and places like that, right? That was an easy thing. But when we went to United Kingdom, England, I was like, this is going to be great. This is a fantastic idea. They have everything that we need. They have kids who do nothing all summer. They have amazing schools that the parents wish that their kids could get into. We have all of the dynamics. And I started talking to parents in England, and they were like, summer camp, what do these words mean? I'm like, summer camp, summer camp, when the kids go away in the summer so the parents can have freedom. They're like, okay, we like that freedom idea, but I've never heard of summer camp. In England, they had never heard of summer camp. The industry did not exist. We were the first ones. So not only did I have to go in and convince you that I was qualified to take care of your kids, then I had to explain to you what the hell a summer camp was. Okay, so now it made it much more difficult. If I had been second, everyone would already know what summer camp was, and half of my problem would have disappeared, right? So it's not necessarily good to be creative. Right? A lot of times you have a more uphill battle. It's a greater fight to win when you're doing something that no one else has done before. So if you're sitting there going, gosh, I want to be an entrepreneur, I don't have an idea yet. When God strikes me with my creativity lightning bolt, when God gives me my great idea, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump on it. Or how many times have you heard this? I had that idea 10 years ago. I thought of that. I just didn't do it because, I was busy with school and stuff at the time. But I thought of that idea. How many times have you heard that? We've all heard that, right? Well, let's just bag all of that and say, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you've put your hand up over your head, you realize you have financial problems that are only going to be solved if you become an entrepreneur. You don't have a job, you're 52, and you can't go get a job because no one's hiring a 52-year-old. So I've decided to start a business. Well, then I have to figure it out. Now I'm going to sit on my sofa until God hits me with lightning. This just seems pretty stupid, doesn't it? What about going out and methodically finding a business to start? Saying, let me look around and see what works. Oh, I heard about this Amazon thing. That sounds kind of BS to me, but you know what? This guy I met says his wife is really doing it, and he offered to show me her checking account to show that it's really working, and you can come over on Friday and help us stuff boxes. He offered to help me stuff boxes. Well, maybe he's not lying. Maybe this does really exist. Maybe I should call him and find out more about that. What's wrong with that? If all of a sudden you're making $50,000 extra in your world, do you discount that because you didn't get the idea yourself? Take care, Cicely. Yep. No, you don't. You could care less, right? 50,000 of new income is called 50,000 of new income, and I'm going to be happy about that. Creativity, therefore, is worthless. It's cool when it happens, but might be more difficult. And so I want you to be proactive in your search for creativity. right? I want you to go out there and look for solutions. Look for magazines that can show you business ideas. Listen to my radio show and copy one of those people. Because I ask them, how'd you start this business? And they tell you, oh, okay, well, this is what I did first. Oh. I mean, I give you a step-by-step guide with every guest I interview. And I've interviewed 600 people in the last year and a half. That's 600 businesses that you can go and copy. All right? But here, look, think about this. Let's evaluate this from a moral standpoint for a second. Are your friends going to care if you copy the idea? Do your employees care? Do your customers? No, again, no one cares. So there's no reason, there's no valid reason to use this excuse. In other words, it's an excuse for you to remain on the sofa. When I get my great idea, I'm going to pounce on it. Is another way of saying, I'm going to stay on the sofa until a lot later. Is there any difference between those two sayings? I'm going to wait. Because God, if God wants me to be an entrepreneur, God will give me the idea. Well, remember that old joke about the guy who's drowning and a boat comes by and the guy says, no, 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 God's going to save me. And a few minutes later, the helicopter comes by and he waves him off. No, no, God's going to save me. And the guy drowns and he gets to heaven and goes, God, you didn't save me. God's like, I sent a dude in a boat. I sent a guy in a helicopter. I tried to save you. You wouldn't save yourself. You know, this is the same sort of situation. God sent me to here to you to tell you not to wait on creativity. So God already gave you the lightning bolt. Here I am, Shazam, right? You don't need to wait. You don't need to be original. There's no intrinsic value in that. You don't make more money because you were first into a market. As a matter of fact, you might make less money because you were first in the market because you had to spend more money on marketing to explain to people what the hell you're doing, right? There isn't any intrinsic value in it. Now, sometimes there are businesses where a land grab is good. You know, if you go out there and, like Google got, the search market pretty well knocked up. Bing isn't making any progress. If you want search, you go to Google. There are some businesses like that. I'll give you that. And there are some times when creativity is awesome, like in art. I'll give you that. But we're talking about surviving and making money to make sure that your kid goes to school and you have food on the table. If that is your goal, we don't care where you get your idea from. All we want you to do is go start a business. So find any resource that you can copy from and steal. If someone else has already done it and proven that that market exists, you're halfway there. You've already got a lot of good work has been done. And here's one of the points that if Chris were here, this is what he would say right now. So I'll be Chris for a minute. Because I know Chris really well, and this is what he would say. If you were to call an entrepreneur and ask them and say, hey, my name's Jim, I'm calling from Atlanta, you're in Cincinnati. And I read about you on Yahoo, and you seem like you're running a really cool business. I'm really impressed with what you're doing. You're a pretty damn amazing person. Now, can I ask you a couple questions about your business? What is that person going to say? Well, as long as you keep complimenting me, you can talk as long as you want, right? And what do entrepreneurs inherently love to do? Talk about themselves. They are narcissistic. All of us are. So if you were to call Sure, I'd love to help you because entrepreneurs realize how much help they needed in the beginning, and they're just type people that give back. I love that. I mean, find a cool business in Cincinnati, call the owner. What did you do? How can I copy that? And then do it yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. If I were in the granite business and I was in California for a vacation and I saw a business that was doing better than me, I'd walk in and say, hey, I'm in the same business, but I'm in Georgia. Can you help me? Can you show me some of your tricks? What are the chances that person's going to say no? Not very good. And if they do say no, then you call someone else in the business, or you go find another business to talk to, or another entrepreneur, because the entrepreneurs will help you. So, I don't know how important the idea is. In other words, I don't want you sitting on the sofa because I haven't gotten my idea yet. That is not an acceptable excuse for your inertia. All right? That's the point we're trying to make here. So entrepreneurship can be about creativity. I'm not going to say that it's never about creativity, but it's just not a requirement, right? It's not a requirement that you go out there and do something new. However, having said all that, we will show you how to be more creative, right? If we keep going long enough today, we will get into some creativity games and everything, and I can make you more creative in 10 minutes. I promise you. So we'll do that if we get time. And that's all I have to say about creativity. It's just not that relevant.